Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the online class sessions conducted by ASAP, Additional Skill Acquisition Program, Department of Higher Education, Government of Kerala. Today, we're going to have a 1 hour class for the 4th semester BArch students on the subject Building Services, Plumbing and Sanitation. And the topic is going to be Solid Waste Management from Module 5. To handle the class today, we have with us Dr. Sumi S., Assistant Professor in Civil Engineering, Department of Civil Engineering, College of Engineering, Trivandrum. Dr. Sumi took her BTech in Civil Engineering from College of Engineering, Trivandrum, did her MTech in Civil Environmental Engineering from College of Engineering, Trivandrum, and she did her PhD in Civil Engineering from University of Kerala. She has worked as Assistant Professor in Government Engineering College, Thrissur, Government Engineering College, Barton Hill, Trivandrum, and currently she is working as Assistant Professor at College of Engineering, Trivandrum. In addition to her teaching experience, she has also worked as a junior engineer with Central PWD, Mumbai, and assistant engineer with the Public Works Department, Office of Chief Engineer, Trivandrum as well. She has also got a lot of papers and journals to her publication list. We are very happy to have you here to handle a class for our students, ma'am. On behalf of ASAP and all the students present here, I welcome you to this class, ma'am. Over to you.
Thank you, Priya, for the nice introduction. First of all, I would like to appreciate ASAP for this series of webinars being conducted during this pandemic period. And I'm extremely thankful for giving me an opportunity to be a part of this program. So with these words, I think I can move on to the topic. So today I'll be handling the 5th module of ES 204 Building Services, Plumbing and Sanitation, which is a course for BTech 4th semester students under APJ Abdul Kalam Kerala Technological University. Let us just go to the syllabus first. And before that, this syllabus aims to equip a student with basic knowledge in general environmental aspects, which includes water supply, water treatment, wastewater treatment, solid waste management, and a basic idea about plumbing layouts in buildings. So this is a syllabus. Font may be small. It may be available with all the students. First 4 modules are interrelated. First 2 modules deal with water supply and water treatment. Then the second 2 modules deal with wastewater characteristics, wastewater treatment, and wastewater disposal. 5th module is a standalone module. It deals with solid waste management. And finally, basic idea on plumbing and layout in residential buildings, high-rise buildings, etc. in the 6th module. So I hope up to 4th module, in most of the colleges, the portion might have been completed. So I decided to start with 5th module as the first session. Since it is a standalone topic, it can be handled without handling the previous sessions. That is why. Moving on to 5th module, we can see that 5th module alone is shown in the slide. It deals with solid waste management, the general aspects of solid waste management, then some methods of treatment or disposal of solid waste management, and how energy can be recovered from the system. That is the last one, that is modern renewable energy system. When you deal with solid waste, what is meant by a waste or what is meant by a solid waste? This is a very basic definition. Even a layman can understand. This definition can be found in the textbooks of small children. Whatever be the main definition, this is the most general definition. That is, it is something that is unwanted, which has been formed or generated out of human or animal activities. That is a basic idea. For a standard definition, we can look at the definition provided by United States Environmental Protection Agency, that is US EPA, which gives a detailed definition what solid waste means, which are the sources of generation, which are the items that should be included in this solid waste category, and which are the items which should not be included in the solid waste category. So, waste in the physical form of solid need not be a solid waste always. For the details, you can refer this slide, and you can understand that, as just explained earlier, it arises from industrial, commercial, mining, and agricultural operations, and it does not include certain waste. In general, we can say that it does not include solid or dissolved materials in domestic sewage, solid or dissolved materials in irrigation return flows, industrial discharges that are point sources, and so on. When we deal with solid waste management, some terms come into reference always. One is garbage or organic waste that forms the major portion of the entire composition. That usually will be food waste. Then the dry part of the waste, that is the rubbish, which we can again subdivide into combustible and non-combustible. Such as paper, cardboard, etc. gets into the combustible share, and non-combustible waste or non-combustible dry waste means it can be inert materials such as glass, then plastics and so on. Together, it is referred as refuse. And if you have some materials such as huge bulky part, that is washing machines or refrigerator or something like that, from which if you can recover something for future use, you call it white goods. And certain waste management facilities use segregated waste, that means sorted waste. Certain waste management facilities use all the they handle all the waste together. That is called commingled waste. And another term for the waste which degrades easily, that is usually that which degrades easily or rapidly under high temperature conditions, that is a putrescible waste. Usually fruits, vegetables, etc. come under this category. So these are the general terms that you come across when you study about solid waste management. So as you all know, when you look at the hierarchy of how to handle this waste, 3 R's, capital letter R in the English alphabet, that is reduce, reuse and recycle. It is very important. If you look, then there are other options, that is such as waste treatment and disposal. So if you look at the hierarchy, what should be given the highest priority? If you make it as an inverted triangle, the base comes at the top, base of a usual upright triangle. Here we are inverting it, and at the top, the highest priority should be source reduction and source reduction. Reuse comes only after that. Source reduction means if you are able to reduce the generation of waste in the beginning, then half or maybe more than half of the effort that you have to spend on solid waste management is over. Then if you are not able to reduce to the required extent, if you are able to reuse the materials, reusing means using a material for the same purpose or for some other purpose without changing its composition, then that reuse part is over. And after that, if reuse is not possible, there is another option known as recycling. Recycling means you are changing its composition, recycling of plastics, you are converting its form and using it for some purpose. That requires energy. So that is not a highly advisable process because recycling it is an energy intensive process. Then after that comes all the other things, that is treatment and disposal comes as the last preference. So this is the waste management hierarchy followed all over the world. The typical composition of municipal waste varies from place to place. The composition that I have shown here is based on a report in the year 2014 from India. You see here we have a major composition of more than 50% shared by biodegradable solid waste. Okay, this varies from place to place, and this generation of waste is affected by many factors. We'll come to that. Whenever a solid waste management system is designed or being considered, there are 6 functional elements which are to be looked into seriously and which are to be studied carefully. So that, see, this solid waste management is a very serious issue. It is a very significant issue and it incurs a lot of cost. We have to go into each and every detail and make the optimum selection to find out a solution which is most economical and effective. Waste generation. Waste generation, as I told, it is affected by a series of factors such as location, the climate. During certain climate, the organic waste generated will be less. Suppose it is an agricultural area, there will be seasonal fruits and vegetables. Likewise, it varies from place to place. It varies with respect to seasons. It varies with respect to the living standards of people, with respect to the legislations prevailing in the area and so on. Then once the waste is generated, at the source it has to be handled, separated and stored for collection. That is what we do in our houses. We segregate the waste. Segregation means it is sorting or separation. We segregate the waste and keep it for collection. Then the third element, that is the most important one, that is collection. Collection means collection takes around 50 to 70% of total expenditure of a solid waste management system. Collection of waste should be very carefully planned. And then it is collected, and in most of the cases it is not taken directly to the disposal or treatment site. It goes to an intermediate location where it is again sorted, recoverables are taken, and then it is transported to the disposal site. So these are the 6 elements. And your syllabus specifically mentions collection. So collection is the gathering of solid waste and recyclable materials and its transportation to, as I told, a transfer station or maybe to a disposal site or to a treatment facility. Whenever you consider the various aspects of solid waste management, the most important one is the segregation. Segregation means sorting or separation into, say, combustibles, non-combustibles, recoverable materials, recyclable materials, organic materials, etc. All treatment facilities does not take all these waste together. If you are able to segregate it at source itself properly, the load that comes on the treatment plant can be reduced. And various other factors, collection mode, how the waste has to be collected from a locality, using which type of vehicle, how many people should be there, that is a collection crew, which are the collection systems that is to be followed. That comes in detail, you don't have to go into that much detail, such as hauled container system, stationary system, etc. There are different systems. Then how the collection route should be fixed, how the collection frequency should be managed. All these things come under collection. That is, it takes a good share of the annual cost of solid waste management. It has to be carefully planned. Once it is collected, the waste that is collected goes to either a treatment facility or to a disposal site. So we will come to that. In general, we can divide this into two. One is biochemical route and other is thermochemical. Biochemical route means chemical reactions taking place with the aid of biological organisms to degrade or decompose the municipal solid waste into a stable. Thermochemical route means the chemical reactions taking place under high temperature conditions to convert the municipal solid waste into a solid. So biochemical routes can be carried out by the aid of biological organisms, usually microorganisms. Higher order organisms such as earthworms are also used. It can be aerobic or anaerobic. Aerobic means those microorganisms which function under the presence of molecular oxygen. It is an aerobic process. And those microorganisms which work in the absence of molecular oxygen, they are called anaerobic. That is called anaerobic reaction or an anaerobic method. And since it is a biological process, it requires its own conditions because the actions are taking place with the help of living organisms which require specific conditions of temperature, pH, moisture, and many other factors. They require their own microenvironment. So biochemical routes are to be very carefully controlled, and it is usually a slow process. It takes some time to initiate and it takes its own gradual pace to pick up, and finally you will get an end product. And usually for biochemical routes, the end product volume will not be too low as compared to that in the thermochemical routes. For biochemical processes, we can have many examples: composting, vermicomposting, biogas systems, sanitary landfills. They all come under this. And thermochemical routes means we are doing it artificially with the aid of temperature. So high temperature and faster reaction rates are the main characteristics. The action takes place at a very short duration of time, but it is energy intensive. You need to supply some energy. There are various processes. General processes that we come across are incineration, pyrolysis, and gasification. Three are almost similar processes, but based on the presence of oxygen, level of oxygen, whether oxygen is required in excess or in a minimum quantity, or in the absence of oxygen, you divide it as incineration, pyrolysis, and gasification. You need to learn about incineration in your syllabus. Okay, and let us start with composting. As I told you, composting is a biochemical process. Composting can be divided into various subdivisions. I have divided it like this. You can have many other type classifications also. It can be divided based on its method as windrow, static pile, or in-vessel composting, or based on the biological action, as I told, aerobic and anaerobic. Then another sub-classification, composting which is carried out with the help of earthworms. It is called vermicomposting. Let us go to the details. See, if you allow a substance to degrade in the presence of oxygen outside your house in the backyard, it decomposes gradually. Composting is the same process, but you are providing some controlled conditions so that you get a required result in the required time. That is actually composting. It can either be aerobic, that means the entire process which involves the separation and bacterial conversion in the presence of molecular oxygen takes place, then you call it as aerobic composting. And a general equation for aerobic composting is given here. Organic matter getting stabilized by aerobic microorganisms. It need not be bacteria itself. bacteria as well as fungi will act on it. Several species of microorganisms will act on it in the presence of oxygen to give out carbon dioxide. Some emissions will be there. Carbon dioxide, moisture, energy release will be there, and a stable end product that you call compost. Anaerobic composting can also be adopted. You might have seen in many places several types of anaerobic composting unit made by several NGOs. They can also be used, but compared to this aerobic process, it takes more time. And since the complete process cannot be ensured in all cases, so the weeds present in the waste may not be completely killed. That is one disadvantage, but this is also widely practiced. The major objectives of composting is to reduce the volume of waste to a stable form, as I told. So, transform biodegradable organic matter into biologically stable materials by destroying pathogens, insect eggs, unwanted organisms, seeds of weeds. Why? Because if we take this final compost at the end, and if it contains any of this, if you apply onto your plants or onto ground, you should ensure that weeds does not grow out of this compost, or insects should not come out, or pathogenic organisms should not come out. So in composting, you have to ensure that all these are killed. And at the end, the end product that you get should be capable of retaining maximum nutrients, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, etc., so that it can be used as a soil stabilizer or as a support for plant growth. Okay, so this is a process that I have explained. It is just shown as a figure. The middle heap that you can see is the compost pipe, where you supply oxygen by some means. It can be either by turning the mix or providing oxygen through pipes from beneath or some other way. And you must make sure that the waste that you keep contains sufficient nutrients and moisture and other required elements for the microbial organisms to carry out the reactions. So that is to be ensured. If it is not sufficient, you will have to supplement it. Then provide ambient conditions for these microorganisms to take its own time. And finally, you will get the mature compost along with some other byproducts also. Okay, this is a detailed graph. You may not require it, but I just want to show you the concept that we can see a graph going up and then coming down. In a compost pile, this is what is happening. That is, initially the reactions will gradually pick up and the temperature will gradually increase. Temperature increases, then it goes higher. So up to 45 degrees Celsius, you call it mesophilic range. Beyond that, you call it thermophilic. Once the reactions are in full swing, it reaches thermophilic condition. That means temperature inside the heap comes to around 55 to 65 degrees Celsius. Not always possible, but if it reaches up to that, we can ensure that all the pathogenic organisms are killed. So once once the food is over, and once the actions are over, the microorganisms will gradually slow down its action. It will die out slowly, and some other microorganisms will gradually take its role, carry out the remaining reactions, and finally there is a stable, mature compost that is being received at the end. And that final phase is called the curing or maturation. Why I explained this is that you don't have to learn this graph in detail, but you have to understand that in this case, the temperature goes up to the thermophilic range. This is the major difference when you compare it with vermicomposting, where temperature does not go to this level. That is one difference between composting and vermicomposting, which we will be learning later. So compost is a final end product that is a stable form. That means no other reaction is required in that to convert it into a safe form. It is already safe and stable, and it looks like the rich topsoil, which has got a crumbly texture, earthy odor, etc. If you add to soil, it is a soil stabilizer. It provides sufficient nutrients to soil, and it can be utilized in that. And as I told in the beginning, there are various types of composting that you come across. Maybe in the newspapers, maybe in the newsletters from NGOs, etc. You might have seen several methods of based on the techniques. It can be generally divided into windrow composting, aerated static pile composting, and universal composting. We'll come into the detail afterwards. And there are a lot of locally available techniques. I've only mentioned 3 of them: Indore method, Bangalore method, and Coimbatore method. These are all locally available methods. They have got its own advantages and disadvantages. There are other methods also beyond this Nagpur method. Many others are also there. So let us see what is windrow composting. See, the waste for composting to take place, you have to make sure that the feedstock or the waste that you put has got certain standards. Usually, the waste is chopped into smaller size before it is placed for composting. So, once the feedstock is prepared, it is laid as rows, parallel rows, in huge land areas, the composting yard. And then, since windrow composting is an aerobic process, so you require air. In this case, only the see in this beginning, in this as per this figure, only the top layers will get aeration. What happens to the bottom layers? There will be absence of air. That means anaerobic conditions will happen. So to prevent that, these rows are to be turned by some means, manually or mechanically, so that air enters all the portions. This turning is provided at certain regular intervals, and if the composting feedstock is allowed to remain for the process, and at the end you will get the stable product. And there can be advanced processes by varying the height of this heat, by increasing the interval of aeration, and so on. You can make this process fast. This is another process where the compost pile is kept under a aerated static pile composting. That means it is kept under a shield or under a cover. So the entire portion will be anaerobic if it is kept as such. In this case, pipes are placed underneath and air is blown at regular intervals to make sure that aeration takes place. This is another method. It can be controlled better when compared to the previous one. And in vessel composting systems, it is available. It can be kept even indoors, outdoors. There are certain containers or vessels, and this can be of small size or even large size, where this composting process can take place by providing the ambient conditions, by the required conditions. There are various subdivisions, and composting has got the major advantage that it can reduce the volume of waste, and at the end, it does not require any skilled management or any skilled equipments, and at the end you get a valuable fertilizer. And there are various disadvantages. You have to be very much careful about the feedstock that you keep, about waste separation, sizing, etc. Certain specific size is required. You cannot put all the waste as such. Control conditions should be there. If not, you should provide it. And at the end, you are not sure how much nutrients will be available in the compost. That is, the market for compost is not stable. It depends upon the nutrient contents in the end. And operation and maintenance requires some cost. And if it is if there is too much of waste to be carried from city areas to a composting yard far away from the generation site, it will incur some cost also. Then we will move on to vermicomposting. Vermicomposting is somewhat similar to it, but it takes place by the aid of not only microorganisms, mainly by earthworms. Not all species of earthworms are suitable for that. There are certain specific species, and with the aid of earthworms, the feedstock or the biomass, and the microbial consortium that is available in the medium, the biological actions will take place. And usually the temperature should not go high. Why? Because these earthworms are highly sensitive organisms which require certain specific conditions of moisture, temperature, sunlight, and so on. So you have to control the system perfectly. It is an easily adaptable glucose technique. And the mechanism goes like these earthworms will feed on the organic waste materials. Due to the peculiar digestive system of earthworms, they are capable of breaking down the complex organic matter along with soil into simpler forms, and they excrete it. The excrement, known as castings, in the shape of pellets, comes out, and these are in the stable form. This contains too much of nutrients that are not immediately available to the plants. So it is the peculiar digestive system of earthworms that helps in breaking down these complex organic substances into simpler ones. When it becomes simpler, this is easily absorbed by the roots of plants. That is the basic principle. And there are different methods of carrying out vermicomposting. Bed method, where thin layers are placed. The unfinished floor is prepared. Above that, certain layers of certain materials are added, and then the feedstock is placed, and then the earthworms are introduced into it. And in pit method, it takes place in pits, so anaerobic conditions are prone to happen. That is to be taken care of. And in both the cases, you have to provide suitable cover, suitable moisture. Suitable cover is provided because earthworms may be attacked by birds or rats or some other organisms, and you have to take care that damage does not. Advantage is that, as I told you earlier, it is a very simple and economic system, and the output that you get in the form of castings, that is fine organic manure, it improves the properties of soil. It is a soil, it improves the soil properties. That is a basic idea. It is a rich source of nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and many other required elements that provides support to plant growth and also resistance to plants. This provides resistance to pathogenic attack by pathogenic organisms on plants. In completely stabilized form, it does not have any power. And the major drawback is that the maintenance of the system is not that simple, because the temperature conditions should not vary, moisture conditions should not vary. Certain type of food you cannot put into the compost, such as those with very high or very low pH. You cannot add into it. You need to put materials that are easy to break down, that can be easily broken down by the earth. Okay, so we have already discussed composting, vermicomposting. Next is a biogas plant. Biogas plant, many of you might have seen. Nowadays, biogas plants are being set up in the backyard of many houses. It is a unit which has got two purposes. One is it handles your waste. This whatever waste that is generated in the kitchen, it is being converted into a stable form, and at the same time it provides energy in the form of biogas which can be utilized in the same kitchen. So it is an anaerobic unit. First of all, that is a main important point. The reactions taking place are anaerobic reactions, a biological process, anaerobic process which converts biomass into energy as well as a valuable biofertilizer in the form of slurry. It's a combination of a digester and a gas holder, in simple words. And there are different types. The basic classification is fixed dome type and floating. Come to the figure, I'll explain. There are lot of patented designs available apart from the conventional designs. What happens inside a biogas plant is 4 stages. What you need to understand is that you input biomass, you get biogas as the end product. In between, 4 stages will take place hand in hand. It is hydrolysis, acidogenesis, and methanogenesis. Methanogenesis is the last stage where you get methane as the byproduct. It is not actually methane, it is biogas, which is a combination of various gases, out of which more than 50%, 50 to 75% will be made up by methane. And methane is a combustible gas. It can be used to generate energy. It can be used in kitchen for cooking purposes. It can be used in lighting. There are gas lights available where methane can be used. The biogas plant mainly consists of a digester. So into the digester, there should be an inlet tank. There should be an outlet tank to collect the slurry. There should be pipe arrangements to collect the gas and take it outside, and the distribution pipeline. And finally, you have to dump the slurry into some region. There should be a manure pit. These are the major components. There are various designs. It is available in all textbooks. This one is a fixed dome design. I told you fixed and floating domes are available. This is a fixed dome design, early Chinese design, entirely buried in the ground to ensure thermal insulation. You can see the inlet, you can see the slurry outlet pipe, the digester in the middle with a fixed dome at the top. If this dome is not fixed, it will be in a floating mode. It will be made of, say, stainless steel or some material like that. So as the gas generates, this top lid will gradually float. There is some other arrangement. Both the arrangements are widely used. Biogas is a mixture of various gases, out of which methane and carbon dioxide are the major ones. This is a result of anaerobic reaction or anaerobic fermentation. And this methane is combustible. This process is a green technology. It can be considered as the gas that you get can be considered as a renewable fuel. But since you get a gas as a mixture of various components, there is a process of purification in between. And if this purification is not proper, some corrosion issues may happen in the pipelines or the burner. Okay, that has to be met. So it is a simple technology. It's a compact unit that if it functions properly, entire pathogens will be removed. So your kitchen waste will not be a menace. And at the end, in addition to that, you get energy in the form of biogas and the slurry that is formed just above the bottom, not at the bottom. Above that, you get a slurry. That is a liquid form. It can be taken out through a pipe and used as an organic fertilizer. And the disadvantages are that there are various types of design. Efficiency depends on the design. Then temperature conditions are very important. It requires some amount of temperature for the reaction to take place. It is not ideal for cold climate. And the waste that you input into it should be degradable. It should be capable of broken down by the microorganisms. Initial cost of installation is high and biogas requires purification before use. Now we are moving on to the last one that is mentioned in the biochemical processes, biochemical law. That is a landfill. Landfill, before coming on to a landfill, let me explain what a dump is, waste dump is. So if you dump waste on the ground, what happens? The waste is heaped. Okay. So the top portion will be undergoing aerobic reactions. Bottom portion or the unseen regions where air does not enter will be undergoing anaerobic reactions. So once the waste is kept as such, gradually something called leachate will be formed. That means a liquid will ooze out. With the aid of gravity, it flows down, and that is called leachate. It pollutes the ground and water. The anaerobic reactions will result in gas generation, odorous gases. It will go to the atmosphere. The entire region will be affected by birds, pests, precipitations, wind, etc. So instead of this, if you can design the system such that all these problems are rectified, it becomes a landfill. A sanitary landfill is one which accommodates municipal solid waste. It is an engineered facility. Actually, in other words, we can say it is an engineered dump. So we have to prevent the entry of leachate. We have to prevent the penetration of leachates, the formation of gas, the escape of gases to the atmosphere, and make sure that everything happens inside a closed region. If you can ensure all these things, it becomes a landfill. One which accommodates municipal solid waste is called a sanitary landfill, and one which accommodates the hazardous waste is called a secure landfill. We need to learn only about sanitary landfill, and site selection requires so many conditions. Let me go to the cross section. This is a cross section where you can see that at the bottom there is a liner. What is the purpose of liner? It can be made of clay with a combination of geotextiles, geomembranes, etc. That liner prevents the penetration of leachates into the ground. But leachates will definitely be formed. So in order to collect that leachate, there should be a leachate collection system above that. And above that, the waste is dumped day by day, compacted, provided with a cover on each day, and which is called a cell. And likewise, various cells are formed one by one, sidewise and upwards. And finally, at the end, it is provided with a cover, a thick cover at the end. So the problem with leachate is over, and the problem with gas, it is covered. That means gas will be trapped inside. So there will be arrangements for taking out gas. Gas control systems will be there. The final cover and the daily cover will look into the aspects such as the attack by birds or rodents. Nothing will happen when this is provided, and there will be certain wells in the vicinity from which water will be taken on a regular interval and monitored to see that this landfill is not polluting there is a check, it is not polluting the surrounding regions. So this is a cross section of a landfill. You can see that the shaded area at the bottom corner is a compacted solid waste. That means the waste is dumped onto a landfill region is prepared, and at one end the filling starts. So a truck will that means the waste of a complete day is dumped at one corner. It is compacted properly. A cover is provided. That is one cell. Likewise, cells will be developed one by one, and sufficient slope will be provided. And it takes a long duration. many years to complete. Once it is complete, the final cover is provided at the top. This is just a small portion of a landfill that is shown. And at the end, it is covered. Liner system, leachate collection system, then gas collection system, everything will be inside. And everything will be placed properly. And the landfill functions as an ordinary place. That means once the cover is provided, it can be beautified using by planting grass or some small, not load bearing ones. So similar structures, small structures can be built on it, or it can be used as a recreational area. And these are the control facilities. What these are the factors which distinguish or differentiate a dump from an ordinary dump from a sanitary landfill. There is a liner system, leachate collection system, gas extraction system, and a daily cover and a final cover. Daily covers and final cover. Okay. And you can see that initially the base is prepared, then the liner is installed, then gradually you can see a JCB at the end, an earth mover at the end, which is dumping the waste. And once it is complete, it can be converted to an ordinary. It looks like how the land looked previously. It just looks like that. It does not look like a dump. And there are different methods. If it is possible to dig a trench, that is, if the land is having soft soil, trench can be done. Otherwise, there is area method where you can construct it without digging deep trenches. Then natural depressions such as abandoned quarries, etc., can be utilized for constructing landfill. There are various advantages. I think most of them have come in the discussion. I think I can move on. That is, it is considered to be a final and complete method to handle municipal solid waste. No skilled supervision is that it is not lost. Within recovery is possible. These are the advantages. But usually it invites opposition from public that has to be managed, and it has to be properly managed. Landfill should not get converted to an open dump. That usually happens. If it happens, entire contamination will take place and it goes beyond control. Okay. And let us move on to the last portion, that is incineration. It comes under the thermochemical conversion process. That means we are supplying too much of temperature, we are providing a condition of high temperature and allowing the waste to get stabilized to some other form. In incineration, it gets converted to gaseous form, along with some products of incomplete combustion such as ash, fly ash. Some toxic gases may arise. It should be purified. When you discuss about incineration, it is not the combustion chamber alone that is there. It is associated with a reception pit where you dump all the waste, and from there, I shall show a cross section of that. We'll come to that, okay? So, by using incineration, you can convert waste to a stable form and you receive exhaust gas at high temperature, and that temperature or that heat can be used to produce steam, which in turn can be used to run steam turbine. That means energy generation is possible using incinerators. It is also a renewable energy process. That is, it comes under the waste to energy technologies. So for an incinerator to operate, I have given the maximum range, that is 900 to 1100 degrees Celsius, and excess of air is provided so that complete combustion takes place. See, if you burn solid waste in the open, that is just open burning. If you are burning it under controlled conditions, in the presence of excess air, that is incineration. That is a dip. Still, you may get some type of air pollutants, liquid waste, ash, etc. These are the gaseous products. Carbon monoxide, if the combustion is not complete, you will get carbon monoxide, some amount of carbon monoxide, that may be less, carbon dioxide, hydrogen, oxygen, and so on. Volatile organic compounds, and so on. So these are the products. But if you receive toxic gases, you will definitely receive that. You will receive fine particulate matter, etc. That has to be, there should be sufficient methods to treat all those things. Air pollution control facilities should be provided before this gases is being discharged into the atmosphere. And there is a rule follow, that is, if you are able to maintain two gases at least for a temperature of 850 degrees Celsius, or that is a 2-second rule, you can ensure complete breaking down of toxic organic substances. This is the flow chart which shows that there will be a waste storage region, then feed preparation, that is just sorting and segregation, it can be done or it need not be done. From there, it goes to the combustion chamber. Combustion chamber is a place where this is burnt. Once it is burnt, gas will come out and ash will go down. Okay, the gas that goes out will be going out at a very high temperature. So that temperature is to be reduced before it goes out as an exhaust gas. During that reduction process, energy exchange is carried out, and that is being utilized for heat recovery and converting to energy. Then the gas which after this process, gas going out will move through air pollution control facility where various processes are taking place. In most of the cases, there is a process called wet scrubbing. That is why liquid waste also comes out of it. Then a cooling fan is there. Then finally, it goes to a very high, tall chimney, and these emissions go out in the pure form. That is actually supposed to happen in an incineration. This is the process diagram. You see, the municipal wastes are dumped in a reception pit. From there, a crane is being used to take this waste into the combustion chamber. There it is burning. Exhaust gas will go out. Exhaust gas means the gases will go out, and the ash will be collected here at the bottom. From there, the exhaust gas will go to some system. It can be any system. It goes to a boiler where that heat exchange takes place. From there, that steam will be utilized for electricity generation, and the gases will come out. It will go through the various air pollution control facilities, and finally it goes out to the atmosphere using a chimney. These are the general processes. We are not going into each and every process in detail. I think this is all. So if it is properly controlled, you can ensure hygienic complete destruction of pathogens. There won't be any odor or dust nuisance. There's an additional advantage that heat can be used to produce energy. It is a compact unit. It requires very less space, and in many places, it can be done at generation site itself. Nowadays, very small incineration units are available. It is being developed, but for most of the industries, they have their own incinerators. And our main aim is to reduce the weight and volume of municipal solid waste. You instead of dumping the entire waste into a landfill, here you are converting it into gas, utilizing it for energy, and taking the byproduct, that is the bottom ash and fly ash, that you can deposit into a landfill. So the load on the landfill is reduced, and it can be operated in many weather conditions, unlike the biochemical process. But of course, you have to set up an incinerator which can withstand this much of temperature. That refractory units should be very strong, properly designed. So initial expenditure will be large. It requires skilled operation also. High stacks are required to dispose the gas. Then there should be some arrangement to dispose the residues. So these are all some disadvantages. It is not an easy process. It requires some skill and technology. And there is a mention on renewable energy systems at the end of the syllabus. So out of these portions that we have discussed, incinerators and biogas plants, they are definitely renewable energy systems. Landfills are not compact units. You have understood. They are placed in large areas to handle large volume of waste. Okay. So what does it mean? The condition should be. It is difficult to control the condition. So if it is economical, the gas generated from landfills can be utilized. If you get sufficient amount of methane gas or sufficient amount of biogas, then landfills can also be considered as a renewable energy system. So these are the three major systems out of what we have learned, which can be used as renewable energy systems. So I think with that, I have touched all the topics within this syllabus, within the 5th module syllabus. And as far as architecture students are considered, this design part and the process microbiology and process chemistry of all these are not intended to be learned as per this syllabus. I think I've covered almost all the topics. So these are the references. The textbook by Joe Benavides, that is supposed to be, there are various textbooks by this author and co-authors. It is supposed to be the Bible for solid waste management. With these words, let me conclude the session. Thank you.
Ma'am, shall we take the questions now?
Okay, sure.
We've got a few questions.
Okay.
First question is, where can we use the different composting techniques? Where all can we use the different composting techniques?
Okay. I think the first three methods maybe the that may be the person may be mentioning the first three methods. See, windrow composting is usually adopted for large communities. The second one can be used for large communities, but you can convert it into in-vessel types where these technologies can be used. And this Bangalore method, Indore method, Coimbatore method, there is another method called Nagpur method, many other methods developed at various levels. All these methods can be adopted. Basically it depends upon the waste that you put into it, the control that you provide, and the volume of waste that comes into it. So it depends on all these factors. These methods can be used as per required. Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay.
Then there's a question coming from Aditi.
Okay.
Aren't landfills famous for creating environmental hazards? How does a sanitary landfill differ from the normal landfill? Is it advisable? Is it a more advisable manner of waste disposal?
No. Actually, landfill means it can be either a sanitary landfill or that is a major divisions. You can differentiate between a landfill and a dump. When it goes uncontrolled, it becomes a dump. Landfills should be properly maintained. That is very important. Otherwise, see, you can see many photographs where the from the top portion of the landfill, the gases are being emitted out, and some portions are burning. You can see such photographs everywhere. Control of this or maintenance of this landfill is very difficult. Sanitary landfill is the one which is supposed to function properly by accommodating municipal solid waste. The other one is secure landfill, where hazardous wastes are being put. That is a separate category. Landfill means it should function properly. If it is not functioning properly, it is a dump. Okay. So unless it functions properly, you cannot call it a landfill. That is the answer. Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
See, for point, we can ensure that the landfill is functioning properly by certain monitoring techniques. That is usually done. As I told you, there are various groundwater monitoring wells will be dug at certain. There are guidelines for all these things. It will be done. So this water quality is being monitored on a regular basis to see that the liners are functioning properly. And then again, the gas monitoring is also carried out on a regular basis to see that the gas exactly comes through all these pipes and goes into the required area. That is also important. Okay.
Okay, ma'am. And Krishna Shri, she has asked, are you aware of Singapore's Polo Semaco Island, famous for being world's first ecological offshore landfill? Isn't it possible to implement such an option for waste management in India, or at least in our state? What's your take on this, madam?
I think I can give a personal opinion on that. Okay. For a country like India, we have got very high population density. Okay. So I think for us, usually for all sorts of treatments, based on our climate, other biological treatments are ideal, such as small systems such as biogas plants or composting units. They will work more efficient. Since we are in short of land, and we are not still not that sophisticated, that is my personal opinion, maintaining a landfill may not be that easy. And what I understand from from the case studies of other countries is that in some places the land, such as UK and Europe, they have a lot of landfills. In fact, I have seen some of them. And they are functioning very properly because their population density is very less. And but in our case, it may be better that we move on to other technologies other than landfills. Okay.
Okay, ma'am. Then we have a question from Akhil.
Okay.
How can we recover methane gas?
Biogas is a combination of various gases. It contains methane from 50 to 75%, depending upon the waste that you put and depending upon the reactions that are taking place. See, in the anaerobic fermentation process, there are 4 stages, out of which the last one is methanogenesis. All these should go hand in hand, and you should get methane at a recoverable amount. That is the main aim. There are some purification processes. I may not be explain all those in detail now. There are some purification processes by which you can separate methane from other gases, and that is being used in the used in association with this biogas systems. If this purification is proper, as I understand from those people who have practically experienced the difficulties, the corrosion may come in the pipes, burners, etc. Okay.
Okay, ma'am. Then we have another question. Are leachate treatment methods available?
Yes, this leachate that is generated inside the landfills, it is actually being collected and taken out for treatment. There are various processes. Basically, there is a concentration process whereby it is concentrated into a smaller volume and then it is taken for treatment. All physical, chemical, biological processes that you apply for waste treatment, wastewater treatment, that many of those processes are adopted for leachate. There are processes, and these processes are to be followed also. You cannot dispose leachate. It is very strong. It has got very high levels of BOD, COD, and many other components. So it has to be treated before it is discharged. Okay.
Okay, ma'am. Then from economic and environmental perspective, which is better, incineration and or a landfilling?
Okay, that is not comparable with the same scale, I should say. If land is available in plenty and if you are sure that the systems are functioning properly, then landfilling is a good option. It is a green technology. Incineration is being practiced again in developed nations with 100% perfection. It is seen. It is several data, or you can see a lot of reports on that. It is happening. And this waste to energy plants, it is not incineration alone. Most of the cases, it is a gasification process. And in some cases, pyrolysis is also happening. What is at the end, what you get is that you recover energy. There is waste to energy. And in fact, I have read that several landfills are being demolished and the waste is taken out from there. I don't know whether it is sure or not. Taken out and taken to the incineration plants for energy. When this technology came as a boom. So it depends on all these factors. If you have sufficient land, if the land is available in plenty, you can, and you are sure that the maintenance and control is proper, you can go for landfill. But public opposition should not be there. Things like that should be taken into care. And incineration, actually, incinerators are widely available all over our country. The problem is that we ourselves are not sure whether the dioxin emissions or emissions of volatile organic compounds are perfectly under control. It can be done. So both are there. It is based on the, that means what you get at the end. The amount that you spend on receiving energy, that is the cost to benefit ratio should be carefully studied. You can opt for a method. Okay.
Okay, ma'am. Then we have, please explain the biomethanation method of waste management.
Biomethanation method, I think methanogenesis process or anaerobic process is being asked. I think so. In the anaerobic process, see, let me go to that slide. There are 4 stages. I haven't kept a bigger slide. See, I don't know whether I should explain each of them in detail because architecture students may not be able to understand that this involves a lot of microbiology. See, there are 4 stages actually happening. The organic waste that you put into the biogas plant, the organic waste is highly complex. Why we don't put all this waste directly onto plants? The reason is that the plants will not be able to absorb the nutrients from it directly. That is why we are converting it in the other biological process. We are converting it into fertilizers or soil stabilizers or something like that. So here also it has to be broken down into simpler units. That is the meaning. See, all the microorganisms will not be carry out all the reactions. There are certain specific set of microorganisms. So complex hydrocarbons are converted into simpler form. First stage, that is called acidogenesis. Acid formation happens. Then acetogenesis. Then from there, next process taking place is the methanogenesis. So this is a stage by stage process where each of the reactions are meant to break down complex organic matter into more simpler and the simplest form. This is the actual process. And this actually requires too much of explanation on the process chemistry and process microbiology. Unfortunately, I have kept the slide on that, and I don't think that much is required for the BR level. That is why I haven't kept that. Now, there are certain species of microorganisms for each of this. And they can function only at that pH and at that temperature condition. And they can only break down this into that. That is the condition. Okay.
Okay, ma'am. Then there is a question. What are the different types of landfills?
Okay, that is what I told you. In general, it can be classified as sanitary landfills and secure landfills. Sanitary landfills means where you, based on the construction, you can divide it into area method, trench method, and canyon or depression method. That is how you construct it. See, if the land is soft, you can dig to some extent. You dig it, prepare it, provide the liners, and construct the landfill on that. That is the trench method. Then, if the land is not that soft, if the land is hard, the natural slope of the ground is being utilized, and landfill is constructed on that. Then, if there are natural depressions such as say abandoned quarries or canyons or something like that, you cannot use that land as such. You have to provide liner because there will be cracks or fissures inside the rocks. Then provide all these things, but that is not much appreciated method. You can construct a landfill. Then the difference between this one, the sanitary landfill and the secure landfill is that in sanitary landfill, it is supposed to be a region where all sorts of municipal solid waste can be dumped. It is a receptor for all types of waste. But the secure landfill means in that you are able to dump or it is possible to dump the hazardous waste. Since it's hazardous waste, you have to be more careful. In this system, basically the design of liner has got a big variation. Liner and cover design is entirely complex than compared to the previous one. It is hazardous waste are not always just dumped as such. It is dumped in containers and it is buried inside the landfills, and so there are several methods. So there is a if you classify it based on the waste that goes into it, it is the sanitary landfill and secure landfill. Based on the method that you adopt, it can be area method, trench or canyon method, and area method, trench method, and canyon or depression method. Okay.
Okay, ma'am. And then one last question.
Okay.
How can we control the waste management within our residences or in a small scale region?
See, waste management can be done very easily. First of all, this is from my point of view. You can, there may be different opinion in that, but let me tell you. See, as I told you, at the 3 R's, if you are able to practice the 3 R's, there is a Japanese concept where it is believed that if you are, you must use something until its life is over. Whatever it is, whatever be the resource, let it be time, let it be something that you can see and feel, let it be something that you cannot feel, whatever it is, a resource. You should be able to utilize the resource until its life is over. That is the first thing. That is you should respect a commodity. That is the R, additional R, I should say. You should have a feeling of regret if you throw something out without its life is being over. If I waste time, I should have a feeling of regret. Likewise, if you waste something, you should have a feeling of regret. So, if you are able to understand that point, minimization of utilization of resources, that's very important. And that is possible in industries also. Which all materials can be used such that you can reduce the waste generation. You can reduce the volume of waste, you can reduce the toxicity of waste. Likewise, at the beginning itself, if you are able to reduce in-house also, you can use materials to its entire once till its life is over. You can use it in various forms, reuse and reduce. That again. And segregation is most important. Suppose you put all the organic waste in a carry bag and throw it away. The useful life or the utility of that organic waste as well as the plastic bag is lost. If you segregate it as plastic and organic waste is organic waste, this organic waste can go to a compost plant or somewhere. The composting site or an incineration unit or wherever it is. This plastic also can go to a recycling unit. So that reduction principle or reusing principle should be followed. And so if you are not able to do that, then you can segregate it. And there is a perfect system running in many places, many developed nations. It is in practice. And we should be able to segregate this waste. We should be able. There should be a perfect system. If it is in your house, the organic waste you yourself can manage with a compost kit or a pipe compost unit or something like. Okay. Then the other part, e-waste. There is a big market for collecting e-waste. You can give it to them. There is a big market for collecting plastic waste. You can give it to them. Likewise, if each of us can do it, and this throwing away waste into the open grounds, if you can prevent it from the child from your habits, I think this should be practiced from childhood itself. And if you have that practice, this can be done. It is possible, but we have to have that mindset, and we should be basically we are not aware of the hazards or problems related with non-technical handling of all these things. If you are aware of it and if you are able to do that, it is possible. Okay, I think I have answered the question.
Okay, ma'am. So we've come to the end of the question session. So it was a very wonderful session, ma'am. We are getting feedbacks as well.
Thank
Students are happy to have attended your session, ma'am. On behalf of SAP and all the students present here, I thank you, ma'am, for sparing your time and giving a wonderful session like this.
I also thank you all. Thank the entire team for such a wonderful coordination and for giving me this opportunity. Thank you so much.